Hey guys, it's Ian Benjamin, Digital Hub, and the spring's here. Today is actually April the 14th, so a couple of days after the lockdown restrictions have started to be reduced. So the sun's coming out, gyms are open, pubs are open as well, and I've managed to kind of frequent both of them over the last few days. But moving on, today, blessed as usual with my guests, Sharon Prior. Sharon Prior, tell you where to start really. I mean, we're going to go through this in a bit more detail. Sharon Prior, she is the director, digital director for IMI Critical Engineering. She's been with the company less than a year, and she's driving the whole digital change for the company, making them more digitized. But beyond that as well, or behind that, she's also driving their equality, diversity, and inclusion sort of strategy, and she's doing great guns with that. Sharon's born in London, and of a large family, but look, I'm gonna kind of get into this in a bit more detail. You're gonna have a hell of a ride with this podcast today, I can assure you. So anyway, Sharon, how are you doing today? How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for the wonderful introduction.
No,
I'm excited now.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm kind of building you up, you know. But no, thanks for accepting my invitation to be a guest on Digital Hub.
Thanks for the invite.
No, not at all. I think it's really going to be an inspirational listen for anyone, male, female, in terms of what they can achieve, not just for women being a female. And so definitely superb. So let's kind of dive into it. So how have you been? What have you been up to?
I've been great. And as you said, the 14th of April, 2 days after lockdowns, stage 2.
Yes.
That we're going to come out of. So I've been feeling really great about that. Even definitely had my jab as well. So
yeah, me too.
I'm one of the guys that really want to get out of this pandemic. So
totally, without a doubt. I think everyone's got to have the jab. It's just my opinion, clearly. Yeah, I'm not trying to ram it down anyone's throat, but I mean, I think we all got to kind of contribute something to get us out of this global pandemic. So if it means having a jab, then let's do it. Do you know what I mean? You know?
Yeah, I mean, as you saw from my LinkedIn profile, I've worked in a pharmaceutical company, so I'm an advocate of pharmaceutical products anyway.
Definitely.
If they can help people, so yeah.
Superb. I'll give a little, what I do typically with the, as you may know, Digital Hub guests, I kind of give the viewers and listeners a bit of a background in terms of what you're about. And one way of doing so is obviously to read a bit of a testimonial from somebody that you worked with previously. And but just to kind of also set the scene for our viewers and listeners, Sharon has worked for Midland Bank, and that kind of led, we're going to get into that, it's a great story, then to the Bank of England. Avon is in there as well, GSK. You work directly with David Gold and Karen Brady and Summers, I think, as well, you know, correct. From a operational perspective. That's really interesting. Thomson Reuters, the post office, I think you worked with Andrew Lewis there as well, and that's obviously led to where you're working now. So it's a great story we're going to cover off today. But yeah, let me kind of give you listeners and viewers a bit of the testimonial that I've got. So this is from Sarah Knott. You worked with Sarah at the TSB, I believe. She says
post office.
Sorry, the post office. Sorry. And so Sharon was simply one of the best line managers I've ever worked for, and I've had to work for. To work for and with her, it was an incredible privilege. Sharon enabled me to work in a supportive and learning environment by setting clear objectives and working parameters and communicating these unambiguously and allowing me to achieve those objectives without interfering or micromanaging me. However, despite being incredibly busy, she was always available to give valuable guidance, feedback, and advice. Her comprehensive knowledge of the digital and operations sector is invaluable, as was her pragmatic and in-depth knowledge of business operations and strategy. From day one, I was made to feel a valuable and valued member of her team, and therefore I also count being a great leader as one of Sharon's many skills. So boom!
Oh wow! Thank you, Sarah. I mean, my philosophy on working is it is all about people. You know, whether it's your customers or whether it's your employees, it has to be about people. It's not about products or services or the building.
Yeah.
And I think if you can motivate and influence people and inspire them to do their best and to be their best, that for me is job done for a leader.
100%. I mean, I'm a recruitment guy, right? I mean, a lot of the people listening or watching know that I'm a recruitment guy. The podcast is second to what I do. But I mean, so I'm with you 100% in terms of getting the right people, getting the right culture in an organisation is absolutely what I'm all about. Something that I kind of like preach for and I'll continue to preach. Superb. So where did it all start for you? Where did it all start? So tell me a bit about, so you grew up in North London, is that right?
Yes, I'm a Tottenham girl and Spurs supporter.
Oh, really? Yeah? You're a Yid. You're a Yid.
Yeah. I was part of a West Indian family. So my parents both came to the UK from Barbados. Right. They came to the UK in the early 60s, married here, and then ended up having, there were 7 of us. I'm the middle child of 7.
Well, I remember you saying that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So it was an incredibly busy, incredibly close family.
How many girls? How many girls out of all the siblings?
There's 4 girls.
4 girls, 3 boys.
Yeah, 4 girls, 3 boys. Yeah. So I have 2 older sisters, and then there's me, and then I have a younger sister. But we were incredibly close. And interestingly, you asked about how many girls, but as a girl in that larger family, we were expected to do things that normal girls did. My mum and dad were very traditional in their roles and their beliefs and expectations of females. And
right.
I think to some extent, because I was the middle child, I rebelled against it a bit. I saw how my older sisters were treated, and I thought, I want to live my own life, and I want to make
traditional. Well, in terms of like doing things around the house, the cooking, and
all the chores, all the ironing, all the cleaning, the cooking. We were the ones in the kitchen with my mum, really. Although my dad could cook, but interestingly, today my brothers are terrible cooks.
Oh, really?
They've met wives that do all for them. So
right. How funny. Do you still kind of get together with the family as well? To kind of see.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dad's passed away. But we all when we can. But we are spread out. I have a brother living in Barbados, another brother living in Germany, and the rest of us are in the UK, in Oxford and London.
Right, superb, fantastic. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, smaller family. Me and my sister, my 2 sisters, were raised over here in the UK. But yeah, definitely. So it was a lot smaller. But yeah, my mum and dad again. Probably similar sort of age to your parents, come over here 60s, mid 60s or late 50s, and 100% very, very traditional. So I know what you mean. I can imagine what a household was like, but it was buzzing all the time and lots of.
I mean, it's great growing up in a really large family because you have that close support network. And, you will have people you can bounce ideas off of, and and that's where.
Yeah. So I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, at the time, you didn't realise it, but I mean, what a great way to kind of shape you as a person. Do you know what I mean?
A lot of my values, a lot of my beliefs were formed at the dinner table.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
And we debated a lot. You know, my dad encouraged us all to have, our own opinions. And one of his key values for us is that when we went to bed at night, we had to go learning something we didn't know when we woke up in the morning.
Wow.
And that's the way I've lived my life. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly reading and looking up new ideas and being really externally focused on how other people have done things and what's worked, what hasn't.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I bring that into the workplace as well. So
brilliant. So what did your dad do? What was his job?
Well, my dad only ever had 3 jobs in his lifetime from coming into the UK. So he started on London Transport.
Right.
And then he went to work for the Royal Mail.
Okay.
Then when he was made redundant from Royal Mail, he went to work at University College Hospital in London.
Right, okay, gotcha.
As a lab technician.
Oh, did you really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where the mind comes from then. I thought that's where you got those DNA in the brain cells that you've got,
Yeah, he was very intellectual, although not academically, but he was a very smart man,
Definitely. Maybe you never got the opportunity to kind of to maybe expand on that talent that which you probably never knew he had in terms of the academic ability that he's got. In his, never had the opportunity.
He faced a lot of obstacles.
Without doubt.
Coming to the UK at the time he did. It was limited.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, yeah, and that's another podcast we can get into another time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
Definitely. So brilliant. So tell us about. I mean, I love when I first spoke to you. We kind of touched on Midland Bank and what happened there. So take it away. Take it through that little.
Well, for those of our listeners here who don't know who Midland Bank are,
of course,
they were taken over actually by HSBC.
High Street Bank.
Yeah, they were HSBC, but back in the 70s, 80s, they were a well-known bank in
High Street. Yeah. I think I had like a yellow griffin or something on the logo.
That's right. Yeah. I've still got my payslips from them. But yeah, so I literally left school with very, very few qualifications, mainly because I didn't go on to higher education. I just left at the age of 17, 17 I left just before sixth form college. And it was expected of me to leave by my parents because, 7 children and money was very, very tight. So I left and went and just started temping, went to a temping agency, learned how to type and went and started working at Midland Bank in their typing pool. So there was about 6 other women there. But whilst I was there, it was probably after I'd been there for about 6 months, I was mind-numbingly bored with the job. I just absolutely hated it.
Mundane, repetitive.
Mundane, repetitive. Then it wasn't really going anywhere. It wasn't teaching me anything really new. And we had a lot of problems with our printing server at the time. And back then, all of our PCs were hardwired networked together in a networking solution from a company called Novell. And back then, the support service was provided by a third-party company, but they couldn't fix the problem. And we lived with it for weeks and weeks, and it was getting really frustrating. So I thought, my brother actually worked for Novell at the time, and he said, "Look."
So that problem was bottlenecking the seamlessness or the processes of your what you were doing.
Well,
so
my function, yes, yeah.
It was a headache, and
yeah, I mean, it was very simple computing at the time because back then most of the bank computers were mainframes, but the PCs were really used to spreadsheets and word processing. That was it. And all we needed it for was really sharing files and doing month-end reporting and that sort of thing. But it was a problem. We just couldn't get the systems linked. So I ended up going out buying a book on networking that was recommended by my brother. And I learned how to troubleshoot the problem. And I actually went in and fixed the problem.
Amazing.
I mean, they were blown away by the fact that I was proactive enough to go out and do this. I had the mindset to be able to do it.
Honestly, that is unbelievable. So how long, do you know what the book was called? And do you know how long you read it for before you kind of like were...
I can't remember what the book was called, but it was on Novell networking. It was a certified network engineering book.
Right.
And what Midland actually did for me afterwards, they moved me into the IT team, and they sent me on a training course to become a certified network engineer. And I actually did the course, which took me 18 months to complete the course.
Fantastic.
And I was the first and the only Black woman who have ever done it at the time. And most of the courses that I went on, I was the only woman in the class.
Right.
But
So you're working in the day, then doing the course at night, or how was it done?
I was going on courses throughout, week-long courses, and there was a certain number of modules. I'm going back many years now. Don't embarrass me. I'm going back many, many years. But back then, Google didn't exist in the way it does now. So yeah, the only thing you could do is get stacks of books to read up, and that's essentially what I did. And I think that was really the way I learnt new things. And I think from that moment on, I realized that if there's a problem in a business, then I need to find out how to solve that problem. That's how I get on in my career.
Yeah.
And I learnt that at Midland. And that's
me, I mean, obviously speaking to you on a couple of occasions, to me, that seems like that was a catalyst that kind of helped set the path for you to achieve?
It was almost a light bulb moment for me that, you know, I could do it, you know, irrespective of my background, my education, my class, I could do it.
Yeah.
And just by learning how to solve problems and solving those problems. So with that, whilst I was at Midland, I became an IT administrator, which was the next rung up.
Yeah.
And then after a while, you know, you hit this ceiling because they still always see you as the secretary that made it. You know, you know. So and I was literally always in rooms full of men, you know, highly qualified men, highly qualified engineers.
Yeah.
And I always had that, you know, imposter syndrome. And I knew I needed to start somewhere afresh, that he didn't know my background, and I could just do it on merit.
Definitely. I suppose only female and only person of color as well. Maybe there's one or two other black guys, I suppose, but you know, but that's amazing. Fair play.
Yeah, yeah. And roll forward a couple of roles, I then landed at GlaxoSmithKline in the early days of GlaxoSmithKline. So they had gone through 3 mergers whilst I was with them. But it was whilst I was there that I embarked on a phenomenal career, because I had the most amazing boss who just believed in me, a guy called Mark Elbay, Dr. Mark Elbay. And he just believed in me. He took a shine to me, and I was almost like his protege, you know, and he would coach me, and, you know, he was my sponsor, my ally in senior meetings, and he would always promote me. And I literally moved up through the ranks at GSK, eventually becoming a regional director there for IT.
So what did you do there? Is that where you done the computer science?
Yeah, so Glaxo also sponsored me to do a degree, and I was blown away. So I did what I thought I should do, which was a computer science degree. But absolutely hated it. You know, I struggled through it. I passed, but I literally struggled through it.
Right. Over like 4 years, probably. That's right.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah. And then I was, whilst I was going through it, my boss, Mark Elbay, said to me, "Why didn't you study something you love?" And I said, "Well, because people expect me to be working IT and have a technology degree." And he said, "Not necessarily. Do something you love. You'd be a lot more valuable to me if you were really passionate about it." And so I then did a law degree, which I absolutely loved. I really, really loved it.
And did you do them both side by side?
No, one after the other.
Right,
I did one after the other. Then I left GSK and then embarked on doing an MBA and then a Master of Law.
Wow.
So I ended up, after leaving school with no qualifications, or apart from my CSEs and O-levels, I then went on to acquire 4 degrees, which
That's
was...
what I mean. That's exactly what I mean in terms of like this story. I think it's an inspiration for anybody in terms of what they can achieve. And, you know, school is just one part of a journey. And sometimes you don't realize your potential there. And especially you can be in the wrong company, or you don't like your teachers, or especially right now, this whole bloody pandemic that we're going through. And the teenagers haven't been able to have the process of education from an exam perspective that you and I afforded, or anyone else did up until 2020. And so it's a different environment. And so, absolutely. So it just shows that people can do it if you've got that kind of design drive to kind of like.
Well, I'll tell you what I learned through doing it. You know, before I did my degrees, all throughout my career, up until that point, I believed I was inferior. I believed there were more intelligent people than me, more highly qualified people than me. And I would sit in a room, you know, look around it and have a chip on my shoulder about it. I mean, I can look back now and really understand it, but I was very defensive. You know, I always felt like I had to prove myself and was never really relaxed. But since doing those degrees, I realized that it's not actually the degree that's the important point. It's what you learn throughout the process. And for me, I think children these days are taught in such an antiquated way. I mean, if you look back on the history of education, children sat in a classroom all facing a teacher with a whiteboard. That hasn't changed for hundreds of years, you know, and yet we've got these technologies and these new, you know, new ways of living that haven't evolved the education system. So I firmly believe we need to change and scrap our current education system.
I think, you know, again, COVID, it kind of just, you know, definitely shook the sort of education system, shook it around and tipped it on its head. The online learning, I agree, it's not for everybody, but I mean, there's elements of what can be done at home, and maybe the way it's broken down in the day to make it more engaging.
Not just that. I think also that we need to teach children life skills, you know, how to get on with others, how to have empathy with their peers, how to do practical stuff like manage accounts, you know, manage their money.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, what's the use of them learning chemistry if they're never going to use it? You know?
Honestly, yeah, absolutely right, definitely. I mean, some life skills, values as well.
Values, absolutely.
Practical stuff, but I mean, I think there is like I think it's called PSHE or something that's taught at school now, where some of those sort of life skills are kind of like introduced, but I mean, but not to the extent of what you're alluding to. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean,
yeah, I think it needs a complete radical overhaul. Radical overhaul. And you need psychiatrists to get together. You need professors to get together, politicians, medical professions to get together and think, if we were to rewrite the way to raise children, what would we do? And I know it'll be completely different. You know?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, maybe some countries have got that sort of innovative way, and their children are excelling. I know that in parts of Europe, there's a bit more life school. They've just got a different approach to education, and I think it's like
indigenous communities as well in South America, who aren't touched by our you know, our ways of living today. They have a completely different way of raising children. You know, and I think we wouldn't have the problems we have today if we looked at this in
overhaul it.
Another story, and that's another podcast.
I'm thinking that's a really good handle. You know what I mean? I'm gonna dig into
Sorry, I get on my soapbox about many things.
Me too, Sharon. Honestly, fantastic. So brilliant. So GSK, and then what was it like working with Karen Brady and David Gold? What was that like working with them?
Yeah, I didn't work directly with Karen. So Karen Brady, at the time when I worked at Dan Summers, Karen was the CEO for West Ham.
Right.
So David Gold owned West Ham as well as owned Dan Summers. But we had a number of meetings where I met with Karen. I mean, mainly from a strategic, you know, leadership perspective, where she would give advice around, you know, her career and how she had progressed and how to deal with certain situations and certain people. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, David Gold's an interesting guy. I mean, you know, he's in his 80s now, probably coming up to close to 90 now.
Wow.
But he created Ann Summers back in, I think it was 1972. He bought 2 shops from someone, renamed them Ann Summers after his secretary. And then
what it was. Is that where it came from?
Yeah, and changed the nature of you know, sex toys in the UK. Made it moved it onto the high street in the 80s when his daughters joined the business. So his daughters Jacqueline and I've forgotten her name. But they both worked, literally haven't worked anywhere else. They've always only worked for David Gold. But it's interesting because it's a business that I would never have imagined ever working for. But all businesses are about products, services, and selling them to customers.
Making money.
And that's what I'm great at. I like looking at, you know, how can we improve this business, irrespective of what the product is. How can we engage better with customers? How can we use technology to manage that engagement and to enable better information sharing with our customers.
Sure, definitely, yeah. Is it David Gold that's got the outside the elevator when you go up into the office and you open the door of the elevator? He's got a photograph of
Yeah,
where he was born or something like that.
Yeah, he's so in the office where where Ann Summers headquarters is. As you go onto the executive floor, as you come out the office, the lift elevator, there's a picture of his mum and the estate on which he was born.
Right.
And it's
like East London somewhere, whatever.
Yeah, it's in East London. He came from a very poor background, but he does it so that he never forgets where he came from. Even though, he's a multimillionaire, he's very successful in business. He's had numerous amounts of businesses. He uses that as a reminder. And I think it's a really good thing for anyone to do.
Yeah, definitely. That's really
very good grounding. And I do exactly the same thing. I have memories around my house where, I never forget, where I've came from.
Yeah.
And I'm always very, very conscious of, how far you can actually come on a journey, but, keep grounded with it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm the same with photographs of my grandmother and stuff, and around the house. And yeah, definitely. I think my kids are fed up with me talking about my background and how difficult things were for me. And they're not plain sailing now, to be honest. But I mean, but yeah, definitely. I think you've got to kind of have that. And I think a lot of that comes back to the traditional values of the West Indian or Caribbean backgrounds. I mean, just kind of hard love, as it were, hard love.
Yeah.
No, without doubt. But Sharon, so in relation to the post office as well, I mean, because I'm assuming from touching on this in the conversation with you, there was like a multi-billion-pound project that you were involved in there to do around data and IT as well. Is that right? How did that come about? That role, that opportunity?
So I joined Post Office in 2015. It was 3 years after Post Office had separated from Royal Mail. And as part of that separation, the government gave Post Office a level of investment. It was £1.8 billion investment to renovate Post Office over a 5-year period. And so when I joined, I was in year 3 of the 5-year transformation. And part of that transformation, a multi-million-pound investment for IT transformation, which meant pulling in basically a greenfield site, new systems, new processes, new laptops. And when I joined, we had literally 8 months to do the final physical separation from Royal Mail, and that meant separate all the data centers, all of the laptops, equipment, all of the services, people, so there was quite a lot still left to do by the time I joined.
Was that a big team? Was you part of it? Was that part of a big team? That sort of...
It was part of a huge team, but it was mainly part of a team that was made up of vendors, so third-party suppliers. And we had implemented a IT service model that involved 5 what we call towers, and we had 5 tier 1 suppliers providing services into Post Office. So I had to work with them to make sure we got all the equipment. There's almost 5,000 laptops distributed across to 346 sites across the UK. We had to put in Office 365 and printing connectivity. Plus all the data had to be moved from Royal Mail into Post Office. And by the time I had arrived and got hold of the program, I realized very quickly we had X amount of data and X amount of time to transfer it. And we didn't have enough time to transfer all the data that we held. So
is that a cloud, in the cloud, right? What year was this? 2000?
This was in 2015, 2016. So 2016 March was the date of the final transformation. But so all the, sorry?
Was it a cloud migration like AWS or Azure?
Yeah.
Cloud migration?
It was our own cloud services from a company called Computer Center. So they were doing all the hosting for us in their own data centers. But obviously having to deal with the Royal Mail, as well as computer centre, as well as post office, and people were just leaving as well, during this time because they were taking redundancy packages. So there was no continuity of knowledge.
I bet.
Either. And to manage a program like that is quite tough when you're literally just thrown in at the deep end with it. So you've got no historical information, you've got no documentation that exists, and you're having to find it all whilst you're doing the migration.
Wow, so like flying by the seat of your pants and just kind of like doing it as you go, learning as you go, and then delivering it as you go.
Yeah, but you know me, I'm a learning person. I like problem solving, so
I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. Long hours, long days, very tense conversations, and having to give really frank reality checks to the exec around what we can and cannot do within the timescales, and managing their expectations wasn't easy. It really isn't easy, and you have to do it in a way that gives them confidence that we got a problem, but Sham's going to fix it.
Super fantastic. So was that would you say that's one of the top 3 or even higher up in terms of the most sort of challenging and rewarding sort of career achievements?
Yeah, I think my time at Post Office was probably, up there. I mean, GlaxoSmithKline was by far the best company I've worked for. But Post Office definitely up there, mainly from a point of view of the learnings that I got from the projects that I worked on, but also the people I met. Met people like Andrew. Andrew Lewis came to work for me at one point, and while I was there. So really, really great teams and great people and great service.
Absolutely. So with that role working there, you also became part of Poem, so it's Post Office ethnic minority.
Yeah. So I think I would say that until I started working at Post Office and sort of got involved in ethnic minority issues, I hadn't really appreciated it from a career perspective.
Hadn't appreciated what? Sorry, hadn't appreciated.
Well, I hadn't appreciated any form of disadvantage at all. I would have said really, there was no real issue. It's all about the individual and how they how they manage themselves, and how they push through some of these issues. And my experience of doing all my degrees and taking that chip off my shoulder was great. But what I hadn't realized is that I still do have this little chip on my shoulder about being Black and about being a woman. And that is also about my upbringing, having been brought up in a West Indian family. My father especially was always about, you've got to work harder than your white counterparts. You've got to be smarter than them. So it sinks into your psyche.
100%.
But in getting involved in the Poem network at Post Office, and really raising some of the issues around institutional systems of unequal power, if I can put it that way, was eye-opening, really. And it started with my work at Post Office, and I've continued it since. But what I realized is that being white, you cannot appreciate the challenges someone who is not white has. I use the word not white because I don't like the term BAME. But non-whites have a different experience than white people in the workplace. And it was difficult having conversations about this. And we had many networking groups and sessions set up called Let's Talk About Race. And, everyone, had some really great exec sponsors sitting in, but they never really got it. And I think it's very, very hard because white people feel that if we talk about racism, it's too emotive a subject. Racism is thought of as being evil, as being dark, and being very explicit.
but it's systemic. It's just become a way of life. Do you know what I mean? So that they, you know, as a white person, to sees it as, okay, yeah, it's there, but I'm not racist, so it's okay. But they don't understand that they may not be racist, but the next person might be, and also the processes that are in the organisation could be historically racist as well. But why would they notice that? Why would they feel that? Because they're not being judged, or they're not feeling it or experiencing it. So it's difficult for them to kind of relate. And also there's a lot of black people that have been very, very successful and will continue to be successful, but there could have been a lot more. And the ones that don't achieve certain things are perhaps facing racism that's systemic, that is preventing them, and it affects their confidence, it affects their career aspirations. I mean, do you agree with me on that front?
Yeah, I had struggled with it in the early days when I started really getting into grips with it. But, you know, as I said, I'm a learner, and I look at problem and I think, you know, what is the real problem here? You know, because yes, we don't have the Ku Klux Klan walking the streets of London. You know, that just doesn't exist. So there isn't that explicit racism.
That's right, exactly.
But if you look across organizations, and you can see as you go up through hierarchies, no matter how many non-whites you have at lower levels, you start to go up the chain, and you know it's completely sparse and no existence. So you don't have any role models that are non-white going up.
There's no black CEOs. I mean, I touched on it before on the podcast. No black CEOs at the top in the FTSE 100 companies. I mean, there was one at Carnival Cruises. He's now moved on. But yeah, definitely the C-suite needs more individuals of colour, not just black. It could be Asian, Chinese, whatever. There's more ethnic individuals, you know, at that level, and more females. And
so just on that point, so here's the problem then. So, you know, if you look through historical time, there has been changes in constitutional and institutional systems of inequality. So back in the the 18th and 19th century, workers or anyone from a working class background could not vote. It wasn't until the middle of the 19th century that working class people actually got the right to vote. Crazy. And the only reason they got the right to vote was because the gentlefolk, so the people who had titles, allowed them the right to vote. And that was only men.
Begrudgingly, probably. Yeah, only men. So maybe women weren't allowed to vote.
Men. Women didn't get the right to vote until the early 20th century, you know, in the 1920s. And only they got the right to vote because men allowed them the right to vote.
So is that in England you're talking about, or are you talking about just like general?
England, in the US as well. In the US, I think, I can't remember what the actual date was, 1918, I think it was. But yeah, so there are clear changes in constitutional powers that make it right for people who have unequal power. When you start to look at non-whites, you know, we had slavery right through to, you know, through the 19th century. In the 20th century, you had the human rights activists, and you know, we obviously got the right to vote, and we got further rights in constitutions. But in institutions themselves, in companies, the people of power in companies tend to be white males. Yeah. And they have a unconscious preference to promote people who are like them. And that's just natural. Because, you know, if I talk to any of my colleagues now, white colleagues, they would say, that I would probably say 90% of them don't have anyone who is non-white in their social networks.
No, that's right. Yeah, it's really funny that is. I was having a conversation about something yesterday, that a lot of white people that are in the corporate world weren't born in the southeast. They might have been born, say, in Gloucestershire or whatever, and there's no black people there. Do you know what I mean? So they don't have any connection apart from seeing Trevor McDonald and on the news, and Lenny Henry and or whatever, and John Barnes, the footballer. There's no, beyond that, there isn't much of a attachment to somebody from within the black community.
Yeah. So if we looked at racism as a system of institutional power, unequal power, then absolutely it exists, because we've only just got to look around. It's not a myth, it absolutely exists, but it can't be used in that emotive way that if you're racist, or you're living in racism in an organization that doesn't promote people who are non-white, or doesn't have people who are non-white on their boards or on their execs, then it doesn't mean that, you know, you are a bad person. It just means you have an unconscious bias to work with people who you like to work with and who you feel comfortable with.
Definitely, but you know, but yeah, you know, but right now with the spotlight, what's kind of going on with, you know, equality, diversity, and inclusion, those individuals should be approached with a comfortable scenario, or an opportunity for them to get it out there in the open and to have those uncomfortable conversations that feel as though they're not going to get their heads ripped off. But they've got to be open for change. I mean, it's going to help their businesses going forward to be more inclusive. And so it's approaching those individuals with a solution to, like, a needs analysis, scoping it all out to kind of understand how those uncomfortable conversations can happen. I mean, that's where, you know, I think change can happen, because those individuals start at the top, at the C-suite, the director level, then it will trickle down. But it's just getting in front of those individuals. That some of them are dinosaurs, and some of them aren't going to want change. And I mean, some of those individuals don't even want change from a digital transformation perspective in terms of growing their business and evolving their businesses. So never mind from a race perspective, but I mean, but those conversations definitely need to start happening. And,
I mean, change is difficult, or as you say, whether it's you're doing a digital transformation or whether you're introducing more diversity into your workplace. It is difficult, but it has to be managed. And I don't think it can just happen on its own.
No, that's right.
And it does start with having very open and frank conversations. And I hate it when people come up to me and say, yeah, I don't see color. You know, I mean, that is it, you know.
It's cringy, isn't it? It's cringy.
Well, it's well intentioned, but it's actually, I find it really offensive, because by its very nature, people see differences. That's how socialism works.
Yeah,
we're all different. And I think
I know what they mean. The intent's there, but it's like, well, think about what you actually said then. So why are you speaking to me then? I mean, why are you raising the subject? So it depends. Yeah, you know, I think the good intent is there from that person.
Well, their intent is that you are different to me, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that is offensive to me, because my view is white is also a race. And if white people do not see that, that's where the problem lies. And, you know, if we all treat each other as different, but we embrace that difference.
That's the ideal, isn't it? That's the ideal. That's the ideal. That's the pinnacle.
Yeah, but it starts with the mindset. A white person has to see themselves as different. They have to see themselves, well, you know, Sharon is different to me. You know, we're different like each other.
But it's cool, but you know.
And it's fine, And it's a different way of thinking. So when you start doing transformation, and I'm having this conversation in IMI where I work now, it's all about the mindset. And we need, and you know, I love IMI, you know, and I just think they're such an amazing company that's really driving that sort of inclusion and diversity element.
Wow, good.
And their view is that we all have a different way of thinking. Let's embrace it. That's their starting point.
Yeah, be open to other people's opinions and views.
Yeah, and they act on it in meetings. So we have an etiquette in our meetings, although it's all on Teams. But we make sure everyone has had something to say, and we always check in. So we have these stopgaps to say, check in with people. Are you okay with that? You raised your eyebrow there. What was you thinking at that point? So really observing how people. Yeah, it's great.
Because I'm sure their outcome is better, right?
The outcome's fantastic.
Definitely.
The outcome is much better.
Get people to be that way inclined.
Yeah.
You know, kind of going forward, definitely. Really, really funny. Kind of getting on that point, I've got to tell you this. I've got to share this on this podcast. A couple of weeks ago, I'm doing some work with BPIC, because of the Black professionals in construction. They're not recruitment guys, so I'm kind of helping them out with some recruitment, some relationships with some employers within the construction industry that are kind of opening up their sort of ED&I, diversity and inclusion strategies. Anyway, I was chatting to a company, I can't say who it is, but a massive billion-dollar company based in the UK, chatting to their head of talent person, HR head of talent person. and I think she's from the LGBT community as well. And we were talking to her about the increasing the level of people of colour or of ethnic backgrounds in the corporation, in their business. And she said, well, what they do, said part of their advertising campaigns includes advertising to the Black communities, to homeless people, and to people that just come out of prison. So, and she, in one foul swoop, that's how she kind of like said it. So it wasn't nothing about, you know, well, middle management, we do this, but to get more people of colour into our middle management or whatever. She just clearly said homeless people coming out of prison and to get some Black face. And I was like taken back. And I was on the call with Amos, and he's my witness that this happened. And we were both just like, and it just, I'm real. How, you know, it's just, yeah, they're Black, so they can go into the campaign that we get for homeless people. Anyone's coming out of prison, you know, it's the same, comes out the same budget, the same pot. And I was just, wow, man, you know, and just unbelievable to hear that. And a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? But I do think that the dial is turning in the right direction.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's a really, really interesting.
It is turning, but I think we need allies. You know, white allies.
Well, allies, 100%.
Yeah, just like, you know, poor people or working class people had upper class people as allies to get them the vote. Just like women had men as allies to get them the vote. We need white people as allies to help.
That's definitely, without doubt, 100%. It's not going to happen because we're not in the position of influence, of volume. Number of people are in a position of Black people aren't. There's not enough of us in positions of influence to make that change. And you know, we need those individuals to do so. But great, Sharon, man, I could talk to you for hours. It's amazing. But so listen. Also, look, over the last year or two, the Digital Hub has been really well supported, and with the podcasts and also the YouTube views, etc. They're kind of going up daily, weekly. Not massive, but we're getting there. And so it's a bit of a platform. So look, I'm just conscious of running out of time. So is there anything that you want to say that now you've got this little bit of an audience about you, about what you want to do? Is there anything you want to kind of get out there and say about yourself?
Yeah, for me, I mean, you know, we didn't really touch on digital, but you know, I absolutely am such a big advocate of technology transformation, but digital is really about how you connect with people. And, you know, I'm advocating at IMI that our focus really has to be on how we manage our engagements with not just with our employees, but with our customers, with our partners and suppliers. And it's all using digital capabilities to be able to do that. And data for me is king in all of this.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer on you get the right data, you analyze it well, you get great insights from it. But also you can use it to do machine learning and to do artificial intelligence and really get predictive analytics going. So I'm you know, that's really my championing bit for the next umpteen years. That's really what I'm driving.
I want to learn more about that. I mean, seeing like the whole data science piece and AI, but even from like 7 or 8 years ago, the value of data, you know, you can't refuse it, you can't deny it. The power of it, is there.
I mean, one of the problems that I think people have when they think digital is it's going to take away my job, you know, all my manual high touch processes that I'm currently used to doing. It's going to be taken over now by these machines. But, you know, McKinsey wrote a report a while ago saying that for every job lost, 2.6 roles are created. So people need to be a lot more open-minded for just changing their
using it to evolve themselves and their businesses.
Exactly.
Or their careers.
And data is the big thing. Data and security are the two the two sides of the coin for digital.
Superb, wonderful. Okay, we're going to wrap it up in a minute, but listen, before we do that, I've got a little quick fire round of questions here.
Okay.
So yeah, put your seatbelt on.
Okay.
Nothing too scary, I promise you, nothing too scary. So what's in your iTunes right now? What are you listening to on Spotify or Apple Tunes? What's your
oh gosh, what's on my
jam?
I listen to all sorts of music, but I think this morning actually, and I can't get the tune out of my head. Prince, Purple Rain.
Oh,
It's
really?
just been Yeah, that was what I was playing on loud. Every time I'm getting ready for work, I put music on. But I tend to have a mix, a Spotify list, a playlist that's a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was from Timeless Lovers songs or something.
So any particular genre that you'd like to listen to? Your favorite genre of music?
Oh, R&B, obviously. You know, I was brought up on R&B and Motown as well. Those are my big. Aretha Franklin is my queen.
Oh man,
she was my queen. Yeah.
Belted out those tunes, can't she, Aretha? Yeah. Wow, she's awesome. She's awesome. What app are you using the most at the moment on your phone? What app? Your favorite app right now?
Actually, my much to the disgust of my husband, it's an app called Sleep Score.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's an app called
Sleep
Score, and it monitors your sleep pattern, and it tells you, because there's a number of stages, there's 6 stages of sleep. I won't go into it now, but I was concerned that I wasn't getting enough REM sleep, which is like a deep level of sleep.
Oh, really?
And it actually measures it, and it's brilliant. I love it. How do you
do it? How does it hook you up? Do you have to have something?
It uses sonar technology, and it's on your phone. You leave it running, plugged in to power on your bedside cabinet at an angle towards you.
Right.
It monitors a certain distance around you, so it doesn't catch my husband.
Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, sleep.
Is it on the iPhone? It's on the iPhone, is it as an app? Yeah.
On the iPhone. It's on the iPhone. Yeah.
You bought it as an app, or does it actually come on the phone itself?
I bought it as an app.
Oh, right. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I actually subscribed to it. I think it's about £50 subscription for a year, so I subscribed to it.
Wow, man! I might have some of that. That's interesting, isn't it? It's so clever now, isn't it? It's mental.
It is. Sleep is very important. I have to tell everyone that.
Oh, without a doubt. I don't need telling you about that. Yeah, it's true. It is. Yeah. It helps. You've got to get you 6-7 hours. I reckon 6 hours minimum a day. Quality
sleep. It's not just about the duration. It's the quality of the sleep. So it helps with your brain, the way you think, your problem-solving techniques. All of that is all down to how well you've slept.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you find as though when you've had a good night's sleep, but in the morning you're kind of more alert and switched on first thing to kind of get
Absolutely. And I have my morning routine. I have an hour and a half morning routine that I get up and do, and I literally bounce out of bed and I've got my ideas, I journal what I'm going to be doing for the day.
Yeah.
So
I'll do that in the morning as well, just kind of get it all back in place, synchronizing my head of what I'm doing first, and I go straight in the office, write them down, and I think I'm like you, drive my missus mad in terms of like, what I'm like in the morning. It's just got to be done. Got to be done. What's your favorite tipple? Favorite drink?
At the moment, it's French martini. French martini. It's pineapple juice, vodka, and a raspberry liqueur called Chambord.
I know Chambord. Yeah. That sounds very kind of like exquisite and very kind of like
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love that.
Very summery, very summery kind of drink. Fantastic. And then so over the lockdown period, lockdown 1, etc. Did you kind of get into like Netflix, or did you kind of watch anything in particular? Like I watched Ozark and loved it. Power, I loved that as well. And remember Hunted on Channel 4, Channel 5, where they kind of go around and they get groups of people get hunted by other people, by this like special task force that are in an office somewhere. So, but what was your little bubble on TV? Anything at all?
Line of Duty, absolutely loved Line of Duty. Really got into that. The Crown.
Oh yeah, I've done that as well. Yeah.
Really got into The Crown. I know, and as I said, because I'm a historian, I love looking back at past history. I know it's all fiction, as they keep telling us, but I
think there's too many good things happen. The storylines, you can relate to the storylines in terms of the individual's personalities.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, obviously, it's not 100% accurate, but I mean, I think that was a really good insight. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, cool. And then, what's your favourite holiday destination been, or would you like to go?
Actually, a couple of years ago, we were in South Africa, Cape Town. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I've been there. Great, yeah.
But Barbados, obviously, is my top #1 destination. Love Barbados. Yeah. And then the other place in Europe is Italy.
Oh right, never been there. Yeah.
Honestly, it is superb. The Italian people, the food, the scenery, the weather. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I do like seeing it on TV actually, like all around Lake Como around there. You've been around there?
Lake Como, and even down as you go further down the south, is Capri, and it's just the Amalfi Coast. It's just an amazing place.
Yeah, I need to go. I don't know why I've not been to Italy. I've been a lot of time around Europe, France, Spain, Germany, Belgium, Holland, etc. I've just not been to Italy. You know what I mean?
Italy far. I've been to all those places. Italy far outweighs.
Yeah. Exactly. Superb. Yeah. Sharon, that's it. We are done. I mean, we have. No,
great. That's gone quick.
I know. I said to you, like, let's do 40 minutes. We've done an hour.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's been great. Honestly, you've been a wonderful guest. We've covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's kind of do it again in the near future.
Excellent.